Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to the webinar Scaling Your Accountancy Firm, ProfitCents with Xero Integration. We are about to begin the presentation right now, and we are just experiencing a few technical difficulties with one of our presentations, so please hold on one moment and we will get started. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for bearing with us as we were trying to work out some technical difficulties. My name is Zach Meyer, and I'm the marketing manager here at ProfitCents. And before we jump into today's webinar talking about challenges that accountancy firms are facing as well as opportunities for your firm, I just wanted to go through a few quick housekeeping items. First, I would like to talk about the slides and recording of this webinar that many of you have asked about and will be emailed to you directly after this webinar. As well, I'd like to point you to the handout section in the right nav of the GoToWebinar software, where you can actually find a PDF version of the slides right now if you'd like to follow along at your own speed. Likewise, there's also an overview of the Xero integration for you to reference during or after the webinar. Additionally, because this is a live webinar, you are muted and we cannot hear you when you might have questions. So once you have questions or thoughts that you'd like us to address, please once again consult the GoToWebinar nav on the right side and enter in your questions there, and we will be answering those at a brief Q&A at the end of the webinar. Finally, I'd like to point you to the call-in numbers as well. If you have any issues with some of the audio today, please address those numbers and the webinar ID right there for you. So I wanted to give you all a chance to look at that, and now we will move on to a little bit about ProfitCents. So ProfitCents was first started in the United States back in 1998, and we were born out of a love for the business owners. We wanted to help give them opportunity to understand their finances and for them to be able to make wise financial decisions that would help their companies grow. One of the ways that we ended up learning the best way to do that was to really and truly arm the expert, and that was the CPA, or the chartered accountant. And so we developed the software for chartered accountants to be able to give real-time financial insights for their SMEs. And ProfitCents has insights from over 600 different industries, and that includes specific KPIs to help analyze operational efficiency in firms, and that ranges to different firms that have specific key performance indicators. Likewise, you can see on here a few different awards that we've been given over the years, and we really and truly have an affection for how the accountancy firm can help their SMEs. And then I'd like to briefly present who's going to be talking to you today on the next slide. First, you'll be hearing from myself, and I'm the marketing manager here, and I do a lot of work researching and writing about trends that are of interest to accountants, and that includes issues and challenges that they face, and then opportunities that they have to grow their firms. And so I work with a lot of medium to large size accounting firms to talk to them about the challenges that they might have, as well as smaller firms too, and trying to really arm them with something that is going to help provide them with insights and value that they can take to their business owners. And secondly, we'll be hearing from Paul Savage today, and Paul has been with the company for a number of years. Paul has served in all areas of the company, so he has a really great understanding of accountancy firms. He has helped consult both in the United States and then also in the United Kingdom, and has worked several years for training and helping client success. So first, I wanted to go ahead and ask a poll question. Since this is talking about Xero and integrations, I wanted to ask a little bit more about your firm and about the type of software that you use with most of your clients. So you can go ahead and just click on one of the bubbles there and submit your answers. And I'm going to leave it open for a few moments here, and then we will kind of let everybody see where everybody's at. It's always helpful to show the polls so that you understand what people are investing in these days. All right, just a few more moments here if you all could answer the poll. All right, now I'm going to close it out and share with you. It looks like the majority of people are using Sage, Xero, or another software for their accounting needs. So that's a good thing to know, and that we will be referencing. It's especially good to know that Xero is something that you're all using, because that's partly what we'll be talking about here today. So with that, I'm going to move on now to talk about some of the challenges at accountancy firms. So one of the luxuries that Paul and I have is we get to talk to thousands of accounting firms every month, whether that be through email, whether that be through large audiences, or through one-on-one conversations. And these are 6 of the challenges at accountancy firms that we've noticed. And so we will be briefly kind of talking about each of these, and then moving into ways that we can help solve for these challenges. So we've taken these 6 and broken them into 2 different categories, one being growing your firm. And so as you can see, the key challenges to growing your firm is acquiring and retaining clients, generating scalable firm growth, and then also communicating complex financials to clients. One of the reasons why we found that acquiring and retaining clients has been so difficult is because it can often be super expensive to then go and acquire a new client. First, one of the things that we have found out is it costs 11 times more to acquire a new client than to retain an existing one. So that's one of the issues that we're facing in the accountancy firms, is how are we going to provide enough value to keep those customers that we already have, so we don't have to spend more time and resources on finding new customers. Additionally, we've also found that there is an unplanned number of businesses leaving an accountancy firm for another accountancy firm, and that ranges between 8 and 15%. And so one of the ways that we seek to help accountancy firms, and one of the ways that we move forward in the industry, is by helping provide enough value to keep existing clients, and also to make acquiring clients less expensive and less time consuming. The second challenge here too is generating scalable firm growth. One of the issues with that is the commoditization of compliance work with audits and taxes. And so what you see happening, we'll address this in a little while, but what you see happening is that the reward, or the value that gets brought into the accountancy firm for performing these compliance activities is decreasing, yet the work of the number of audits and number of taxes accountancy firms are doing each year continues to grow. So what ends up happening there is that the larger firms are able to handle that workload because they have the manpower and the time to do that, but some of these smaller firms end up getting overworked, trying to keep up and keep the doors open, and then they get purchased and merge into a lot of these bigger firms. And one of the other key things that we learned is that though larger firms are able to keep up with the compliance work necessary to keep the doors open, they're also generating a ton of revenue from non-traditional services. In the IPA 2015 survey, we've learned that on average, between the top 1 and 300 firms, 26% of total revenue is coming in from non-traditional services, and those services increased by 22% from the last year. So really there's a lot of value to be had in shifting to non-traditional services, whether you're a small firm or a larger firm. Likewise, then the third issue into growing your firm is communication of complex financials to clients. One of the beauties of being an accountant is that you actually understand what you're looking at. Most of the business owners don't have a good business sense and don't know what they're doing when they're looking at numbers. So there's a really big translation barrier that needs to be crossed when communicating to a client how good or bad their business is currently performing. And I know this is something that Paul and I have heard several times, where you can actually take your financial statement and go over it with your clients, and then you see this kind of glazed look on your clients' faces as they look back at you. So one of the key ways of providing that value is figuring out a way to make something that is businesses are leaving their accountancy firms. One of the numbers that we have, businesses report being currently and actively prospected by other accountants. Providing value and understanding can help keep them. Then on the next slide, and the next section of the 6 challenges that we've broken out, we have creating infrastructure. And these are the harder issues. And then you can start to invest and help with these other 6 into a cyclical improvement firm. The problem of attracting new talent is that the cost of retaining can be difficult. Great benefits and also a good commission and salary that comes with their work that they do. So it's always a difficulty to try and keep them there and trying to provide value to even your partners and your staff. But one of the ways that we've also identified that you can provide that value to both your staff and then also your clients is by adopting new technology and integrating web-based software with your business processes. Making somebody's life a lot easier goes a long way. That's really what we found provides the most value within the firm and without the firm. Those are things that I'm sure each of you have experienced in your own firms and continue to see as trends also in the industry. And so what we do, and I'll put up one more poll question before we hop into the next situation, but this is about just typical roadblocks that you might have experienced within your firm when adopting new technology solutions. You can see some of them might be company culture or the cost of implementation, or maybe you're a little unfamiliar with the potential solutions, and then one of the key ones that we hear many times is that it's just you're too busy to actually implement them. So please go ahead and fill in the poll question, and I will close those out in a moment and let you know the results. Likewise, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us with anything that you might want us to address or any thoughts that you have. So I'm going to leave the polls open for another few seconds here. All right. I'm going to close it down and share the results with you so you can see what some of the bigger issues are. So we see that 2 of them are that you're too busy, and then the cost of implementing these technology solutions or purchasing these technology solutions are too high. So that's good to know that you're not alone, that you face the same issues as many other people on this webinar and in the industry as well. And so we're going to talk about today why investing in solutions can be useful and how your company can do that. And you'll see the value of that as well when we get into the Xero integration. So one of the things that I would like to talk about, and I know this slide says how ProfitCents customers achieve ROI, but realistically I think this could be titled something else too. It could be titled just how accountants achieve ROI. Because what we end up having, and we'll go into this in another slide in a little while later, and like I addressed earlier, is that so much time and effort is going on to keeping up with compliance work that there's very little time to identify other issues and places of value that you can provide to your current customers. And so what you end up having is, you can see on the far left pie chart here, that there's tons of time allocated to compliance and evaluation services, as well as administrative and client acquisition. So all that time gets taken up trying to just keep the doors open, keep churning, keep going. We all know what tax season's like, and that you just went through that. And that's often all the time that you have is just to focus on taxes. So one of the things that we've been seeing in the industry, and thought leaders have been talking very much about this, is instead of trying to take on so much compliance to keep up and keep your business thriving, keep your book of business alive. And one of the things that they have recommended is diagnosing and analyzing your clients' financials, which you can see at the top there with the one little dot turning into several different dots. And what we're trying to illustrate there is that you can take one client and actually identify several issues that you can address as a trusted advisor. And by identifying those things, you're making your relationship with them much more sticky. They're not going to be as willing to walk away because they see the value that you provide them. And likewise, you're going to provide more time to be able to acquire new clients, to be able to spend time with your family, or to be able to perform advisory services and grow your business. So really the goal of technology solutions these days and automation is to be able to dive deeper into one client and provide more value than having to take several clients and feel drowned by your work. And so on the next slide that we'll go to, it's a little bit of an example of this, and this is from Alan Colton, who is a extremely valuable asset to us as a thought leader in the U.S. And this is one of the numbers that he was able to run for us and show us that the more services that you offer and provide to a client, the more likely they are to stick with you. And so we see this trend again continuing with the idea of becoming stickier, then also opening up more lines of revenue for your firm in providing these kinds of services instead of just providing a tax service or an audit service. There's still a 75% chance that they'll leave you over 10 years. But by providing these newer services and these services that can provide more insight and value to your business client, you can actually retain them over the longer course of the year. And then on this slide is one of the slides that I was referencing earlier, is that you can kind of see where I'm going here. On the left side, you see that there is a time spent during the year or per engagement, and then on the bottom, you see number of services sold. And so currently right now is you're having a situation where you're not selling many services, but you're spending so much time per each compliance engagement that you're feeling swamped and overwhelmed by your work. And so one of the things that software as a service or web-based software like Xero and like ProfitCents does is it helps you begin to identify new opportunities that can streamline and increase the number of services that you can provide by decreasing the time you spend on each engagement. And this ends up helping you not have a headache. This ends up helping your clients feel valued and that you care about them and that you know what's going on in their business and in their industry. And so that's one of the values that we see in software and one of the values that we see within the industry and how it's transitioning from compliance to consulting. And so with that, we're going to go to another poll question, and this is probably the most important of the poll questions, I think, for today, that will kind of give us all a bit of an insight into where we're all at. And the question is about providing or proactively providing advisory services. And you can see, yes, our firm does proactively provide advisory services, or our firm is providing advisory services, but reactively. And then also kind of more so answers focused on the compliance aspect. So please look at those and be a good judge of where your firm's at, and that way we can continue to tailor today's presentation to you and help you receive the most value out of today. Likewise, I just want to remind everybody that they have we have the handouts for the slides in the right-hand side, and also an overview of the Xero integration that we're about to transition over to right here. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and close out the poll, and I'm going to share with everybody what the results are so that we all can see where we're at. So we see the overwhelming majority is providing advisory services, but reactively. And then a close second is we have our firm does provide proactive advisory services, which is a great thing, and where we see most of the industry shifting over. But that's okay, too, for the people who are not providing compliance or who are only providing compliance work, because there is always opportunity to grow. And one of the most amazing things about this is because the transition is happening so slowly, there's so much market share to begin to grow your firm in that area. So being able to have time to take advantage of that opportunity is always something that's open to you, while we have some firms that are already there. All right, so I'm going to close that poll. And then in the last few slides here, before we transition over to the Xero integration, I just wanted to talk a little bit about ProfitCents, which is the company that we work for, and then also our product. And it is an accountancy solution designed to help firms differentiate themselves, build client relationships, provide more advisory services, and perform core accounting functions all within one easy-to-use software platform. This platform is customizable, and it helps simplify integrations of financials from various different software packages. And as well, it can be globally accessible, if you're in a client meeting or even outside of the country. And they also help you to provide a lot of insights with their industry data and can serve the functions of loan analysis and cash flow projections as well as benchmarking. And so with that, I just kind of wanted to transition over to what the process of what we kind of talked about today with the benefits of the ProfitCents solution, really the benefits, again, of achieving an ROI off of advisory services. And what that looks like is once you acquire and develop clients, that you provide them insights in that step and then bring them over to seeing how you are different than the other firms that they could be working with. And in that number 2 step, to differentiate your firm and sell additional services, it's really important to ask yourself, what is it that differentiates your firm? Oftentimes, that's one of the big questions that we ask. And I would say 95% of the answers tend to be customer service. And if 95% of the firms are saying that, then I don't really think that differentiates them. So we really want to focus on honing your own differentiator. What is it that you can provide, and how do you provide it that sets you apart from other firms? And then finally, it steps into software as a service that helps scale your firm. And with that, we're talking about automation, whether that be helping you with lead generation or helping you with the processes of benchmarking, forecasting, loan analysis, or even your audits and review. It's about being able to apply software to your daily functions that then can help you to spend more time acquiring, developing clients and differentiating your firm. And that continues into repeat referrals and repeat clients. And with that, now I'm going to hand it over to Paul Savage, who is going to take us through the integration today and give you a little bit more of an understanding what everything will look like.
Thank you, Zach, and thank you guys for joining us this afternoon. Let me pull up our ProfitCents software so you can see exactly what we're going to be talking about. If you can't hear me, just let me know, and I apologize for the raspy voice. But what I want to do is really kind of twofold, and Zach mentioned it. I want to walk through the product, what's available to you, very top level, but also show you guys the Xero integration, how quickly that works, how streamlined that process will be in accessing our reports. So I'm going to start by just giving you a little bit of an overview of what's in here. So web-based, so again, you can access this anytime that you have a internet connection, whether it's on a tablet. You can even pull this up on your phone if you like. But you're going to see the reports that are available to you. I can hover over each individual report. It will give me a little bit of an overview of what's included. Now, 3 of these reports are really advisory-based. That's our narrative. That's our historical review of what's going on for a particular business. Our projections, which are really threefold, the what-if scenarios, the loan analysis, whether it's existing loan analysis or even a potential loan from a documentation standpoint, and then there's an informal valuation available to you as well. And the one I'm going to start with is just our industry data. This is a great reserve of information that's available to you. It helps you identify at a macro level what trends are going on in the business, and it's built solely from other users of the product. So when you're using ProfitCents, you're cooperating in an aggregate model. All of your information goes into a data pool that you're able to pull at an industry level. Okay? So it's not altered or filtered in any way other than having to go through our screens to make sure that the data is correct in terms of, you know, annual data versus monthly data, things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to briefly run a quick report for you. From an investment in time, this really is just seconds. So you can imagine how easy this will be to provide to a client from a value add standpoint, particularly if you're not even giving them advisory services. You can still up the service that you're available to them. Okay? So I'm going to just choose an industry code, and we have, again, a little over 600 industries. Generating this report. It's going to let me look at all the ratios that I track in the narrative from a benchmark standpoint as well as a real-time component. Okay. You're able to brand this as you are able to do all of our reports, always giving the opportunity to show that client that this is the information that you're providing as their advisor. Okay. We've got a little cover page here, and then we're just going to a quick and easy 5-year summary and then an all-year summary of the data that we pull. Okay. Again, an important factor with this is this does not take into account any American data. This is only built off of the UK users of the product. Okay. It's a completely separate model. Okay. You can customize this at your liking. You can build this into a marketing component, which I've helped lots of firms build, whether it's for a prospect, just a one-page engagement piece is available to you. Okay. Second component, building on that advisory piece, is going to be the narrative report. And this is where I'm going to show you how Xero comes into play, because we're actually going to build a client profile. But what I want to do first is just to show you an existing report so that you have an idea of what's included within it. Okay? So I'm just going to select on a report that I've already ran. Okay? We'll give that a second here to just open up. And as Zach mentioned before, if you have any questions about anything within this, just let us know through the chat feature. We'll either address it as we go or we'll do it at the end in the Q&A. And now we're at the mercy of our internet. All right, so again, every report that we're going to run is going to have 5 series of metrics available to it: liquidity through industry-specific performance ratios. Zach alluded to them a little bit earlier, but what they really are industry-driven ratios that are provided by firms to us, so they can request what a KPI is. If we have enough data, we'll actually provide that to all firms. So a restaurant may be beverage sales to food sales, that type of thing. Highly relevant for that particular industry that we're going to provide for you. Okay? The report's going to look a little bit like this. It's going to have an overview of the business, so you're comparing it in like revenue ranges. We want to be as comparable as possible within that. And then we'll talk about each individual component, both in accounts for the business and the industry trend as a whole. You'll be able to look at that information from a graph standpoint, and you'll be able to customize this information based on that particular client. Okay, so you can color code this information, you can mark it and brand it. You've always got copyright on that, so that this is, again, your report that you're providing. You can imagine how long it would take to pull this information together. You're going to be able to do this in a matter of minutes for a client. So streamlining the services that you offer, but at the same time increasing the level of engagement. So that's kind of how you run an existing client. Now, the additional beauty of this is the amount of customization that's available to you. You can do this in a couple of ways. You can do it by editing the information. Perhaps you want to enter in text that's relevant for that client. You want to add context to the report. You're certainly available to do that. If you want to change up the presentation methodology, you can do that as well, bring it into PowerPoint, create a little bit more of a visual component. You're able to do that here as well. We'll make all of that available to you. But also, you can customize the actual components of the report anywhere from the accounting method, the chart formats, the colors, what's included in the reports, and actually a new option that just came out a week ago. You can actually open and close certain sections of the report. So perhaps you only want a one-page summary. You can do that at the click of a button now. Very easy to do based on what your client's particular needs are. Okay. So that is how we pull a narrative report. What I do want to show you, and what hopefully everyone wants to see, is what the Xero integration looks like. So what you got, live Xero report being ran. So I'm going to go to our home, and we're just going to create a client from scratch, generate a report, and this should take under a couple minutes. So you can imagine how quickly this is. I've not done anything ahead of time, so no magic tricks on this. Okay. So I'm just going to make a little test. I've created a client profile. That's all I need. We need no identifiable information. Okay, so I have no data for this client. It's brand new. I'm just going to choose my integrator. Okay. What I do want to pause here is that we do have other options. So if you're not using Xero, perhaps you're using Sage or Iris, whatever it may be, we also have a feature that will link to those via an Excel integration, so you can bring your trial balance directly from those programs into this format here as well, okay, allowing you to map that information based on your preferences. The difference with the Xero, of course, is we're going to talk directly to Xero, and it's already going to be mapped based on your preferences. Okay. I'm going to log in. Okay. You'll go to the Xero landing page. Your companies will be listed in the drop-down. Simply choose which company you like. Hit authorize. That tells Xero that it's okay to communicate with ProfitCents. Okay. And then you pick and choose the data that you want to include in the report. Okay. Now I'm going to pick some specific data because I only have a little bit in the sample, but you can choose anything from 1 to 12 months. Okay. Pick the periods I want. I'm going to do the last 2 months. I can either go to the default mapping, which is basically allowing the system to keep whatever you had in Xero, or I can go to customize, which gives me an opportunity to review that information. Okay. Again, your accounts are mapped based on what you've already given from an information standpoint to Xero. You can make changes here if you like, or you can just hit continue. Screen here essentially allows you just to review the information that you've brought in. Okay. There's only one period in that data company there, but that's okay. We'll crunch the numbers, and all of a sudden, here you go. Here's your report. Will that take 2 minutes, 3 minutes tops? So particularly if you're using Xero, a very, very streamlined process. If you're using the Excel for other applications or other account production software, you might be looking at the 10-minute range just because you're going to be mapping some of those accounts. But you do not have to do manual entry if you do not choose to. So either way you look at it, it's a very streamlined process. Xero is just going to make that highly efficient. Okay. If you have any questions on that Xero, just go ahead and type it in. Zach's keeping track, and we'll talk about it towards the end of the Q&A. Okay. But I do want to be able to show you guys the other components of the reports. Okay. So we've looked at two pieces. We've looked at industry data. We've looked at narrative. The third component is probably the most robust out of these. And to be honest, I could probably spend about an hour and a half talking about it, and usually do when I'm training on it. But you guys are going to get the quick 5-minute overview just to get an idea of what's available to you. Now, I have pre-ran this report because it takes a minute or two to load and do currency conversions and so forth. So I've opened the document ahead of time. But this is what you're going to see here. It is a multifaceted projection model. It's very robust. If I were going to limit it to 3 things, it's really going to be these 3 things. There's what-if scenario planning. So really the ability to adjust any metric throughout the P&L or balance sheet and see the impact on that through the business, both vertically through cash flow and horizontally as a trend. Okay, so anything that you can think of for modeling out, you can try in this projection component. The second component is a loan analysis. That loan analysis allows you to compare both proposed and existing loans, the impact on the business, and then to actually document the ratios that are needed for that. Okay, you can model out refinancing options, you can model out new loans, you can model out changes in payment structure. All of that is available to you in this loan analysis. Okay, the third component is a valuation piece. Okay, the valuation piece is a thumbnail discounted cash flow valuation, so it's heavily reliant on the projection itself, but it's great for exit strategy planning. It's great to see the impact of changes in the business. You know, if I wanted to come in very briefly and just say, okay, we have an opportunity on the margin side, we're falling below where our peers and where our trend is for our industry. What if we can do things to improve it? What does that look like for the business? I mean, I can model out a change very quickly, and I can actually see what happens to my value. Right. So every change that you make in the projection flows through this DCF calculation. And you're not, of course, only limited to these. These are just some options that we highlight. There's a series of controls, a lot of options that are available to you that we just simply don't have time in this particular setting to address. But just want to let you know that they are out there. You know, perhaps you've got an annual series of data, you want to run a monthly projection, that's available to you. Okay? If you want to do quarterly, you can go all the way out to 10 years, just depending on the terms and the solutions that you're trying to provide for your particular client. Additionally, of course, there's a series of other worksheets available to you, really highlighting however you want to present this information. Perhaps it's a relationship that you're trying to show between accounts. We're going to give you the ability to edit this for the particular conversation that you want to have and actually go forward and show the client based on the conversation that you're trying to lead. Charts, ratios, all available through here, as well as one of my favorite components, which is kind of a recap. It's the scenario dashboard. It actually allows you to see before and after projections. All right? Our projections based on the historical information in that report, what happens when you make changes to it, compare them side by side. This is a great summary sheet for that. More of a deliverable than the actual projection is itself. Okay? If you have questions on the projection component, again, send them over to us. I'll do my best to address those. As like I said, I spend a tremendous amount of time in that particular product. Okay? The last piece that I want to show, and that way we make sure we have enough time for Q&A, is our analytical procedure. Now, it's a little bit of a different component versus the other three that I've shown. It is a little bit more compliance-based, so helping you, produce information for your reviews. Okay, so we're going to automatically calculate your expected value calculations and values. So we're going to generate one real quick for you. Really what we want to do with this component is to streamline this process for you. Definitely leans itself towards the pre-planning stage of an audit if you do them. So again, your meetings with your team, meetings with the business owners, streamline that process of getting your expected values, setting up your threshold analysis. We provide due diligence with industry data and a narrative report within this as well. Then additionally, there's a component of this report that you can actually take offline. So there's an Excel download of this particular analytical procedure report that allows you to work with it on-site if you're not necessarily connected via Wi-Fi or internet. You have the ability to still work with this product and then save it back to ProfitCents, okay, when you do have connections. So we're going to look at a 3-year component, run expected value calculations. Most importantly, allow you to identify which accounts are problematic for that particular business, and then actually go in, note that information, note it in the final review report, and then actually be able to investigate that information online. Okay, so fairly robust here as well. As I mentioned, there's an Excel component. You can download this as well. You can set risk thresholds in there. There's also a budgeting tool that's available to you in there as well, and then you can set threshold values here. So very quick and easy, either by percentage amounts, by value. However you choose to do, you're able to produce that within the report. Okay. So again, I know quick and easy on these, but want to make sure that you sort of at least get a little bit of visibility on what's available in here to you. Like I mentioned, completely web-based. You'll have full functionality on everything on a mobile device. The only issue you may run into would be projections. But you typically wouldn't do that on a smaller screen, so as long as you're on internet-based, you're still fine there. Okay. And one of the other things I kind of just wanted to go, and I'm going to kind of jump back to the PowerPoint. Again, if you have questions on this, just let me know. Typically, when you buy a software as a service, there's always an opportunity, to grow with exceptionally well here. And I'm just going to skip through. These are just some overviews so that you can have them in your particular guide, as Zach mentioned, your PDF. But one of the things I think we do particularly well here is that we really build ourselves as partners for the firm. And I can speak specifically to this because this is my role. From the time that you come on board with ProfitCents, I really work to establish what your goals are. The ROI can be drastically different between firms. Understanding what's important to you, making sure that we put together a training plan that is as beneficial as possible for your particular ROI goals. Train your staff, ongoing training. We offer enhancements to the product several times throughout the year. You're at least going to get 4 enhancements quarterly throughout the year, so that's something to look forward to. I mentioned a couple of things that were brand new this time. So it's not a drop-off service. It's not anything we kind of, deliver and then set you on your own. You're in constant communication with either myself or my team. So that is something that you have that's really, I think, to take advantage of. And we really look at, dropping ProfitCents to you and with this goal of how to get started, all right? And it's a very simple process, and this really works across most firms. Select an individual from your service line to lead implementation and coordinate your team, okay? Identify a champion within that firm, okay? It could be the owner of the firm. It could be who your main user of the product is, whatever that is. Identify a champion inside of the office. That is key to making sure ProfitCents get off to a great start. And really any software from an implementation standpoint, okay? Second, you want to identify what clients benefit from your financial analysis. We will help you determine that information. We've got tons of stats on the type of business, the type of business owner, the industry, all of that information on who is relevant and who is most likely to benefit from a ProfitCents report. Okay? Extend those services to those parties that are interested in improving their financial performance, and then build a plan to get it in the hands of your clients. Okay? All of that is done through your consulting team. All of that is done in the beginning of the process and throughout the life of the license. You're going to be in contact. Typically, I'm reaching out to most firms once or twice a month. It may be just to provide you with thought leadership. Zach puts together a lot of great content, and I send that information out. That makes him happy and makes me happy, and it's good information. If you decide to, something you want to look at going forward, it really is a great relationship that's that I think can be mutual for both parties, to say the least.
And before we get into the question and answer time, this is just a little bit of a continuing conversation poll that we'd like to ask is, how would you like to kind of continue this conversation with us, or do you feel like you got some insightful information from us today and how you'd like to move forward? So please take a quick moment to answer the poll. We'd really appreciate to hear what you thought about today's presentation. Likewise, we also have a survey that will go out really briefly after the webinar. We'd appreciate your feedback on things that we could do better, things that we could improve about this presentation so that we can end up providing more value to you. So I'm going to leave the poll up just a few more seconds here, and I think we have about 50% responders right now. So please go ahead and answer those, and we will move on to the Q&A. Likewise, please send in any questions or even thoughts that you have that you thought were interesting. We would really like to have your feedback, and we already have about 4 or 5 questions that we'll get to. So I'm going to close down the poll in just a few seconds here. All right. And so now we're going to move on to the Q&A time. And so we got a few different types of questions. We had some from a functionality standpoint, and then also more about the company standpoint as well. So one that might be helpful to start with that we had a question about is why are you called SageWorks? And this is me, by the way, asking these questions to Paul, so we're going to do a little bit of a moderation here. But why are you called SageWorks? Do you integrate with Sage?
We integrate via Excel, so let me address that one first. So it's a very quick integration. You take your trial balance into a CSV format, so you just download it right out of Sage, and then there's a Excel import into ProfitCents. Then you can pick and choose how that information is set up in terms of the mapping for that particular client. So it does integrate with that. As to why we're called Sage, it might be more important why Sage is that, because we were actually SageWorks before them, but it was really just based on we wanted to provide knowledge for business owners. So that's really where the Sage component came into play. Sage as a software was a couple of different companies that merged together, so we're not related. That was a couple of platforms, Peachtree Solutions in the U.S. and something else in the U.K. That merged together. So even though we share that component of the name, there's no true relationship other than you can certainly bring your data into ProfitCents without any problems.
Thank you, Paul. So the next question is not so much about functionality of the product, but probably a little bit more about just what kind of insights you should provide as a trusted advisor. And the question is, what is the most valuable insight you can provide your clients with?
You know, I really think that's tough to generalize. I think it really depends on the relationship and the goals of that particular business owner. Perhaps it's an exit plan. I mean, we can study the number of businesses that plan to sell, particularly when you're looking at small and medium enterprises. We can look at the number of businesses that plan to exit from in terms of ownership. Perhaps that's that. Perhaps it's growing the business. Perhaps it's becoming more profitable. I think what ProfitCents reports allow you to do is, even if you're not familiar what their needs are, our reports are going to identify that for you. It's going to show you where their strengths and weaknesses are. And I think you can come up with the right solutions for them based on what our reports tell you. Sometimes it's not always as visible, but being able to compare their financial statements against their peers, against industry trends that we've seen as a whole, will really identify and open up some avenues for consultation. So it may not be one specific thing that works for every client. It may be that utilizing the reports to help identify those going forward is where it comes into play. If that's helpful.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. One thing I'd want to add to that too, I think part of the insights that you can add to your client is, yes, helping them do what they are planning on doing or want to do, but also I think an aspect of being a trusted advisor is knowing how to challenge the business client with insights that you can provide. Because oftentimes they don't really know what they need to do for their business to survive. And a lot of times what being a trusted advisor looks like is taking some information that they don't have and presenting it before them that would make them think to do something that they weren't initially thinking to do. And so being able to take some information and develop something that would challenge them to redirect their attention, to redirect their investments, and that's one of the key things that I think a trusted advisor and accountant can do, because most business owners don't really know where they're going. They don't really understand their business. But for the next question we have here, this is kind of a functionality question. Is the industry data country specific? Is it only applicable to industries in the U.S. and the UK?
No, it is built specifically for the UK. So we're pulling industry codes from Company House, but not data. The data is driven solely off of UK users. Now, within the UK, there are other countries available to you. So if you wanted to produce a report in Euro versus the pound, for example, you could choose an Irish component, or UK or Wales, for example, or Scotland. So you can identify that information and segregate it within ProfitCents, but it takes into account no industry information or industry classification from the US.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Another one of the questions, which I think we kind of looked at this a bit earlier, but is what other accounting software integrates with ProfitCents?
So we have direct integrations. What I mean by direct integrations, that's where we actually log in to that particular software application and communicate back and forth. That's why Xero is so fast. That's why QuickBooks Online is so fast. Caseware, for that matter. For anything that we don't have a direct integration, we offer the Excel integration, where you're still pulling that information into ProfitCents via the information that you have in your AP software. Why that's important is it's important to do it that way because you're avoiding manual entry of data. I don't want you ever to think that you have to come into ProfitCents and key in period after period, account item after account item. That's not the way we want the software to function. Because of that Excel is pretty open in terms of who it will communicate with. There's some slight formatting changes as you go from vendor to vendor, but for the most part, I've never seen an account production software that did not produce a trial balance in a CSV format or an Excel format that we could not integrate with. It becomes sort of a universal language for us to communicate with different platforms.
Thank you, Paul. One of the other questions is, how present are you in the UK?
I guess I'll talk about physical presence, and maybe whoever asked the question can elaborate if they want. We still work specifically in the U.S. in terms of that's where we're located. However, we're there every month. We're usually there 1 to 2 weeks. So we travel quite a bit. You'll see us at conferences, particularly if you're members of groups like 2020 or some of the other associations, you'll see us there. But we have no physical office there. You know, but in terms of things like support, we still have a dedicated UK support team. So they're in the office nice and early here in the U.S. You know, roughly 3:30 a.m. You know, so we have a dedicated team, just no physical address there.
Yes, and to add to that, I know Paul had mentioned a little bit about conferences that we'll be at, and I just wanted to do a quick shout out that if you are going to these, there's a 2020 spring conference, which I believe is March 9th, that we'll be at, and then also we'll be at Accountancy in early May. So if you or your firms are planning on being there, please come find us or just shoot us an email. We'd love to chat with you and get to know your firm a little bit better. But with that, I think we are kind of at the end of our presentation today, and if we did not get to your question, we will be sending you an email shortly after this. And likewise, I'd just like to point you to the handout section on the right side if you'd like a copy of today's presentation and if you'd like an overview of the Xero integration. But thank you very much, and I'm glad that we were able to hopefully provide insight to you today, and please give us some feedback on what you thought about the presentation and things that we could change to make your experience better. Thank you for your feedback. Hope you have a great day.